Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I am Everardo Resendiz, and people around here know me as Coach Ever. I am an executive and business coach here at Action Coach in Northwest Louisiana. Today, I have Jon Fitzgerald, team leader at InfoLink USA, as my guest, and we're going to be talking about his business, the journey to business ownership, challenges, best practices, and share a peek into what it's really like to build and operate a business. If this is your first time on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe to get notifications when we drop conversations just like this one. And so, Jon, welcome and thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Happy to take the time.
Hey, will you share with us a brief overview of your background and tell us a little bit about InfoLink?
Sure. Well, my background, um, I've done a lot of things. I was in communications in the military, ran a small family business, an automotive business in Baton Rouge when I was going to school at LSU. And then I've been in the telecommunications business after selling that business. I've been in telecommunications, starting with the tower business, and then my customers pulled me into doing harder wireless problems. Right, we used to build towers. Now we build systems for in building. Um, Making cell phones work, mobile data work, augmented reality, location-based services, IoT, all that kind of stuff. We focus on in building spaces for the energy sector, the healthcare sector, some sped stuff.
Very cool. And so, for those who are not familiar with these, I sort of like to get a background on what type of services are out there and the difference. We talk about mass communication and all these cellular networks all over the place. Um, Problem is when you start getting into facilities like big buildings, hospitals, and things like that, right? Not only you have to deal with, of course, your mobile signal not getting through, but oftentimes it's very difficult to get a good wireless connection anywhere. So
Sure.
tell me a little bit about how the InfoLink goes about putting that together.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I mean, the first thing is trying to really understand the scope. It's so easy to get caught up in the tools and go on about fixing a problem before you really understand what the customer needs, right? And those customers, as you said, it could be a hospital, it could be a high-rise building, can be a factory, it could be a mine, it could be a little building out in the middle of nowhere, a little metal building that just needs cellular service or Wi-Fi. So usually we start with floor plans. After we understand the scope, we'll start with floor plans, and then we assess. We take surveys, we understand what the carrier networks are doing. If it's a carrier system, sometimes they're private networks, and we only have to worry about making it work for that enterprise. But a lot of times a company like ours will come in to work with many carriers, right? We'll work with every carrier that services the municipality or services a hospital. So we'll start out with floor plans, and we actually build digital twins of the every project we do. And then we'll place the equipment and run propagation, RF, wireless propagation analysis of the equipment that we're specing. It's pretty high-end software and very really specialized test equipment and all that. It's I don't want to bore your listeners, but there's quite a bit of sausage making to it.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
uh, but it's all known, it's all physics, right? So if you use the right tools and have the right experience, you can do that. And then we'll follow it through whether we're pulling the cable in the facility or someone else is, and we're simply the architect.
Gotcha.
So right. So sometimes we've also pull our own cable as well, but mostly, especially in larger facilities, others will do that install, and we'll come in and provide project management, testing, and turn up, and then we'll work with the wireless carriers, right? And that's where the kind of the I don't want the special trips come in, right? Knowing who to call, when to call, how they do business,
Right.
what they need to be able to support the bills that happen.
The thing is that you already have the know-how and the relationships built, so it's a lot easier to get through any of these challenges. And so I'm curious, does it work the other way too? Like if I don't want anybody in my facility to be having access to anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, because the wireless carriers, and of course, you have to add public safety to this when you're talking about public buildings, right? So the first responders have to have radios too. So you can't cut any of those guys off. You don't want to, but um, it's an interesting question that has come up from time to time. The only time I've actually heard it where we did stuff, help with a reference design for a prison
Yeah,
where they wanted to
you know,
shut
that
down
makes
all
sense.
cellular, yeah, all cellular communications for except for what they wanted. That's the only time I've heard anybody get away with it. I've heard lots of theater owners and stuff talk about it, but it's actually illegal. You can't do
Assume that
that.
there's some regulation according to that.
There are tools. You can do it. It's just not advised.
And so help me out and set the stage for the viewers and the listeners. What does the current ownership structure look like? In other words, are you the sole owner? Do you have any
Sure.
partners, outside investors, things like that?
Sure, sure. Well, we're a small, tight team. My wife and I own the business. We bought out my two partners that retired back in 2015 is when they retired, 2016. And InfoLink is actually a 27-year-old company. Um, and has focused on industrial controls and wireless since the beginning. And I came in 2013, and then we've really focused the whole company to be a wireless focused business, public safety wireless, Internet of Things, and of course cellular and Wi-Fi. We do some stadiums as well.
Got you. Okay. So since you and your wife are the owners, what's your role and what's her role?
Mhm. Well, I'm like head troublemaker, I guess you'd call it. I'm my title's the CEO. As you saw, I like to go by team leader. We're a tight team. Monica, my sweet wife, handles all of our financial side of the business. And then we've got some great people that we've been able to, some that have worked with me for a very, very long time, uh, and then other new recruits that we've come in and have trained and invested in putting them in a position. Something that might be interesting, that something that we're going through. A challenge I've had my whole business career has been running sole proprietorships, right? Where um, uh, I'm driving things, and we have a small team, and uh, when uh, uh, when I'm focused on it, everything's getting done. But when I'm
Right.
not focused on it, things don't get done. And
Right.
we have begun a multi-year transition to be able to recruit and train uh, people. Had some very lucky in getting some just great engineering talent and great technicians to be able to put into those roles. And it's a really good thing, when you start to be able to step back and not just have time to focus on business development, but to be able to focus on what really makes your company different, right? Are you meeting the customer's expectation? Are we driving the best technology solutions that
Right.
we can find, right? Is it the best value, right? It's when you're the only one making the plate spin, it's so easy to be myopic, right? It's so easy to be
That's right.
just focused on what you're focused on, and I found it to be not only better for business, but just more satisfying for everybody involved if to take that team approach and to watch some of the young talent that we've been able to bring in, watch them flower into it has been really nice, very
There you
satisfying.
go. I mean, you talk about something that we touch on quite often in this podcast, and it is that trap. That you get things going, and it's exciting, and it's that problem solving ability that we have as people who are in charge. But then it's our solutions, right? And then other people may come in and not do it the same way, and that's always sort of a conflict. But I'm glad that you're already going through that stage in which you're considering, okay, so how do I expand this so I don't have to be the one
Yeah.
that everybody comes to whenever there's a problem? And so that's what we call the on your business type things, right? Like the questions that we ask about, the strategy, the thinking of future or the systems that we need to have in place. rather than the actual operating of the system. And so it's a balance that is difficult to strike, if we can even call it a balance. But I'm glad that you're in that place. Okay, so let's move on to what makes your business so special, right? I'm sure you're not the only one with the canned goods here for this
Sure.
type of service. But so if I'm in the audience, how do I know I'm a good fit for you?
Sure. I mean, it's a good question, and one that, if you're in business for yourself, you really need to be asking all the time, right?
Yes.
What differentiates us, right? Um, I think what we do is bridge the gaps, right, in situations that require a high degree of trust, right? And that's, I feel, is our primary differentiator, right? Yes, we do high tech stuff, absolutely. But, that's dealing with wireless carriers, dealing with large OEMs and emerging technologies. It can be extremely challenging for an enterprise that doesn't focus on that world, right? That's not their business. And it requires a high degree of trust for someone to, uh, something as opaque to that enterprise as we're going to make your cell phone work, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you guide them through that without them having that core competency, right? So that's what makes us different, right? Is that we don't do we do up to this point I've relied on word of mouth and networking for business development, and it really is because we're that team that you can trust to come in and turnkey these difficult integrations, right? That are multifaceted, and it's an honor to that our customers trust us in that way, but we work very hard to earn it.
You say that you do as much as your competitors, you do more. How is it different?
Yeah. So to be able to pull off I'll give you an example. Give you an example because it just to set the framework. You come into a hospital, they have three carriers, four carriers that are serving. You got to be able to, and they want to be able to develop a system. So not just the planning of it, the building the digital twins, the where to get the stuff to be able to do it, but how to jump through the hoops with all of the carriers individually and communicate with them individually, communicate with the public safety folks, build systems that comply to that, to that set of scope. And then you got to build it, right? So then now you're talking about going out and working often in live environments, live operating businesses. So you're
Right.
deploying small teams of people, to be able to do some very specific, high touch work, right? So it requires companies that much larger than ours. We're the smallest company that I know of that does what we do. Now we have a laser focus on what we do, but we don't go out of scope very much,
Got
unless
you.
it's additive things, right? Like public safety, like augmented reality, like location-based services, right? That we're starting to integrate into our service set. So I think our differentiating factor between us to land that plane, between us and other companies, is we're smaller and thus less expensive, right? To provide that very high touch, very complicated solution set.
Like a boutique or a customization of sorts.
Right.
All right, well that makes sense. I mean, and let me see if I understand correctly. Ultimately, you're able to offer a service that it's probably not provided by people from your size. Um, you know, Matching the needs of some of the larger competitors out there. And so that's an interesting, very interesting spot to be at.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about experience, right? We've
It's
been really lucky. I've when I first got into the wireless business, uh, it was 1G. Now we're talking about 6G,
yeah,
right? Things have changed dramatically, and it's such an exciting industry to be a part of. But it's the kind of thing, we you can't punch a clock and do this for a living, right? This is not the kind of thing that you come and show up and sell your time for. You have to be into it.
and
You have to
continuously
be
evolving with
excited
it.
about it. Right, right. Yeah, it's
Technology and whatever is new today will be obsolete a year from
yeah,
now.
Yes, yes, and being able to lead a team of people that are excited about it, and see not just the interesting technology, but that we're able to box well above our weight and make a good living doing this. Is a really fun thing.
Okay, well, you do express these, and you did say that, the majority of the work, if not all of it, comes from word of mouth or your networking, the people that know about you and what your capabilities are, right? For other people out there that may be needing what you have to offer, what's one thing you wish more people knew?
Well, I'm gonna take that, put on that hat of fence rider again, right? To ride ride the fence between the technology and the enterprise and the wireless carrier, or the big OEM and the enterprise. These are complex issues and complex solution sets. But you can't let that paralyze. If you're in an enterprise, you can't let that paralyze, or so you make no decision or default directly to the big OEM or the wireless carrier, right? There are companies out there that provide these solution sets. It just takes a little bit of research to go and find them. And the best customers we have and the most productive relationships we have from a solution set standpoint are customers that we end up having a long relationship with, where we're that turnkey provider for everything that they do in their facilities, right? For wireless, right? Um, yeah, I think that sums it up.
Very good. Very good. And so, let me ask you this just as a matter of course. Of course, you do have a presence online, you have a website, you have your LinkedIn profile, right? What other means do you use to get across that you guys exist and that you have those capabilities that may be in demand, right?
Yeah.
By those who have the need for the services.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you'd be surprised, well, the wireless carriers recommend us quite a lot,
Okay,
right?
that's
Well,
great.
that's that we'll get someone will drop our names. Hey, you got this problem, call these guys. And that, boy, that just, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years, 20 a long time, long enough time to get all this gray hair. Um,
So there's some strategy there with relying on your the wireless carriers who know how you operate to actually, you know, recommend you to other people.
yep. That's certainly been a strategy, a default strategy, but a strategy, nonetheless.
That's right.
Um,
That's right. And that's how it works, you know?
we've started doing something here this last couple of years where we've gone into public spaces as a service provider, like Lafayette Park down in Metairie. We provide the Wi-Fi there, but we've also done some very interesting things there. We provide the Wi-Fi as a service, right? So we've come in and we've done very high security, right? In an environment, because it's a public space, you can't get anyone's information. So it has to be an anonymous environment. And there's an expectation, because it is a public space, of being secure, right? Right. No public Wi-Fi is truly secure. Be the first to say that. But if you have the tools and the architecture to provide it, you can go to Lafayette Park and get a secured connection that is tunneled and isolated from everything else around, that is impossible to hack. It's just a Wi-Fi system at a park, right? But it's we're able to, we put in for their light show in November, December, that they do every year. They have this big Christmas light show. It's a massive event. It's crazy the amount of people. They're talking about a couple 100,000 people going through every year. This last year, we did an augmented reality addition to the light show. So you could go there with your phone or your tablet and download the park's program and application on your phone from the marketplaces, and then be able to see more than just Christmas lights. You could throw
Amazing.
snowballs at people. You could have videos of it was just so much fun. Right.
Oh,
And
that's
so we
amazing.
followed up with that. Yeah, it's fun stuff. It really is. And we're trying to learn how to work with those tools, and always better to do that in a paying gig. Right.
Yeah, of course, of course.
This
Nothing
last
better than getting paid to
year,
learn.
that's it. And it's a beautiful thing if you could pull it off. This last it was just last month at Festival International. We did an AR, an augmented reality art show with a local artist, Francis Pavi. And you could go and focus on his art with the app that you could download to your iPhone or tablet or Android, and be able to recognize with the application recognizes the art and then brings up additional art around you, right? So, or another piece he had where it layered the 2D piece of art. Um, we gave Francis a HoloLens, a Meta HoloLens, and some high-end software, and he did a 3D moving, so I guess it'd be 4D uh, uh, installation above Festival that you could see from a couple of kilometers away. And it was just up above Festival floating in there. You raise the app up and you could see it moving up in there. It's great, just so much fun,
Wow,
right?
that's impressive.
Right. But
That's
we see
impressive.
that, we see that as the kind of the next evolution uh, for the services we provide, right? When you go inside and you lose GPS, you lose that GPS accuracy. The need for, say, wayfinding, for information, for public notification, um, advertising. They call it the spatial web, right? And it's something that's about to break big time. You've seen examples of it, Pokemon Go.
That's right.
There's the NBA has some great examples they're doing that really neat stuff. Making their live shows a lot of fun. But I think that we've got some longer term projects with some of our healthcare customers to work on wayfinding solutions, to work on embedding information in the facility, right? So that you arrive at a certain location and then you could bring up additional information through your phone or smart glasses. Um, Right, or even audio. They wanted an audio component so that as someone comes to a turn on their way to dialysis or wherever, that they get take a left, take a right. And
That's
that's
right.
really interesting when you start to talk about being able to interact with those with actual, live environment to be able to serve that information up. This is not any new technology per se, but people are getting used to using the technology. Certainly, everyone walks around with their cell phones in their
It's
hands.
I have been able to visit some locations where there's some of these in place. It's just very yeah, it's green, right? It's being used now more. It's not new technology, but it is now being put together in a way that it's useful. And so that's the realm you're in right now. And so it certainly comes with its opportunities and challenges along the way.
Sure.
So we spent a bunch of time focused on some of those things and getting people to know you a little bit. But let's take a step back and dive a little bit into the journey, right? So you have this automotive business, from automotive to telecommunications. That's certainly a big leap. So what led
Mhm.
into that?
Sure. Well, I did 8 years in the Army, carrying radios around, right? So, by trying to make radios work and for infantry, right? So that was certainly there's a fascination there with it,
Okay,
right? And uh, the customer facing automotive business is not the most glamorous or rewarding. It's challenging. It's full of challenges.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. But it's hard to break out.
So was it like
So
a garage, a repair shop
it
or
was a guy.
something?
It was a Saab Volvo specialty shop in Baton Rouge, Fitzgerald
Okay,
Saab Volvo service, and it was my dad's. And then I grew up around it basically. And then when I got back from the Army and started going to LSU, I worked there. And then he died in '96, and I took the business over and ran it for a few more years, and then got the opportunity to become a partner in the tower business. And I've always wanted to, a little bit of a adrenaline junkie. I've always been fascinated with towers. So I got into that, and it was an interesting ride. But uh, then my customers in that business, I separated from the tower business, and my customers in that business pulled me into my carrier customers into addressing their hard problems, right?
Yeah.
One of our first in-building jobs when it was Primeco, actually, which was one of the smaller wireless companies when GTE and Primeco merged to form Verizon. This
Okay.
was Primeco, and my first in-building jobs was going around to their stores and making sure the phones worked at the counters, right? Because you the phones didn't work at the
Pretty.
counters, and they were trying to sell them, right? So it was really simple little amplifiers, but it was early days. This was 1998, right? So
Wow.
yeah, so it's just evolved. Being fascinated with it, it was easy to stay engaged, right? And so that's um,
But you
and
went
so
from working this business to actually owning it, right? So you already had the experience of owning your own endeavor before, right? So the transition to ownership wasn't that much shock, was it?
yeah, well, there was a you know, I didn't leave the tower business because it was right after 9/11 happened and then things were going down. The business survived, but I stepped away. So I didn't leave with any, amount of capital or anything. So I went through a good decade of working for others, right? Essentially doing the same thing I'm doing now, right? I've had some big builds. I've worked directly for carriers doing stadium builds and that kind of stuff. But I got to see different parts of the industry in doing that. And so when the opportunity came to come into InfoLink, it's a really interesting story. I actually hired InfoLink. They were spooling the business down. They were getting ready to retire and slowly spooling the business down. And I needed a general contractor that I could manage because I had just been given, I was working as a contract engineer for C Spire out of Mississippi. And I had been given the job of building a Wi-Fi network in the stadium in 120 days.
Wow.
Right. Right. So from zero to 120 days. Uh, we got it built and got it done. I needed a general contractor that I could have on a very short leash, to be quite frank. We had to have things happen, and we didn't have time for contract negotiations or anything like that. We had to get in
Having
there
other
and
priorities, which happens quite a bit.
yes, right. So after that, they actually asked me to come in and show the company the wireless business, and uh, and then asked me to take over as CEO. And I did that for a couple of years, and they said they wanted to retire, and so we just bought them out. We came up with a equitable deal, and the business has been cash flow positive the whole time. Leaning on lines of credit here and there where you get when you get big, really big projects, right? But so it's built slowly and organically, and it's just been a really great ride.
But it's now it will be 10 years since you took ownership.
Yes, sir. 12. Yeah.
12, okay.
Oh,
So
I got no. You're right.
2015,
10. So
10.
2015. You're right. 10.
Well, maybe 12 years since you joined InfoLink,
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
but about 10 years since you started the ownership. That's excellent. And so, in this journey in InfoLink, what would you say has been the most memorable roadblock or hurdle that you were challenged with and
Yeah.
you were forced to overcome?
Yeah. I really think it is we were lucky enough to have business. We were lucky enough to have some good, competent people who knew how to work safely, right, and have a good work environment. But it was what I was talking about earlier about that being a sole proprietor, right? Is being able to, eventually you get burnt out. Eventually you're spinning all those
Sure.
plates for years and you lose your drive. And so having done that and back a couple of times in that process, we finally decided to start to add people very strategically, and we've gotten just so lucky with some of the folks that we've found, just really bright, young, motivated engineers and technicians.
So
But
what's the
yeah,
plan
that was the
now?
challenge. To answer your question, that was the
Yeah,
challenge, is learning how to make that transition, because you wake up every Monday morning and you got to keep those plates spinning.
that's right. And you got to depend on other people to do it. You work through that. And so I get that that's, in itself is a challenge on its own. There's a lot of people in business who never get to that point because, well, at least not voluntarily, right? Um, they, um, they have it under control. What would you say to somebody that is perhaps in the throes of really getting to that burnout stage? Burnout being, of course, the number one cause of business failure.
Right?
At some
I
point they
believe it.
just lose the drive and, you know, they fall down.
Yeah.
So, what would you tell somebody that is in that stage? How they get around it?
Try and remember what got you into it, right? Try and remember what drove you to do that, because it's hard and you got to have some drive, and everybody's got you know, a reason to go, at least they had it, right? Before the complications of, running a business and daily life get in the middle of it, get in the way of the fun, right?
I agree.
So,
It gets
you know,
complicated with time.
it's complicated, right? But if you can figure out how to have fun with it, and that fun can be just watching other people grow, right? I mean, that fun can be, it's, we're lucky in that we get to start, we had a lot of situations where we start with a real definable problem, and then we get to do what we do, and we end, we walk out of that facility, everybody's happy, stuff is working, you're turning up new systems. That's an absolute blast for someone who, geeks like us, right? I mean, and that's what brought me back to it, right? And looking at, once again, we're lucky in that we're in a technology field and in a fast moving, fast changing technology field. So, our motivation is just trying to keep up, right?
Of course it is. All right. And so let's look at the next 3 to 5 years. Where do you see this company going?
Yeah, there's been a shift, because especially in the cellular business, and in that the carriers are not paying for this infrastructure. Not They haven't since the late aughts, right? They haven't paid for infrastructure unless you have a Super Bowl at your facility, or in your town. Then you don't get infrastructure paid for by the carriers. They'll pay for some, but you got to know how to work that. What's interesting is what's happening now is that we're able to serve up those base stations, that carrier presence, as a service, right? So transitioning to selling these networks as a service, and then layering on additional things like security, like location-based services, like guest-facing Wi-Fi, like IoT. All of those things that I just mentioned have the characteristic of being out of band for an enterprise. At a hospital, you have what may, or at a factory or what have you, you have your internal network that's business critical, and you have all these other things: guest-facing Wi-Fi, connected lighting systems, connected HVAC, you know, access control, right? That's what's next for us, is being able to layer these additional things onto what we do and provide that out of band technology set, solution set that increases or improves the enterprise security profile,
Love it.
right?
So, what has been I mean, to this end, what has been your approach to goal setting? How do you set goals? How many goals do you
Yes.
set? Do you document them? How do you go about this process?
Yeah, we do set goals, but often there are goals to achieve a certain solution set, right? We don't we're not as disciplined as we should be in business goals. So in fact, that is a
Don't feel bad. Most of us don't either. I mean, I ask a question because it's interesting that, we know that we accomplish what we go out or we choose to, right? And when it comes to the business itself, it does require a little bit of thinking on, this is where we want to be by the end of next year. Then what needs to happen now,
Right. I'll tell you
right?
some of our goals here. The goals have gotten very interesting in business, right? AI agents are changing everything in the service businesses, right?
Yes.
It's not that we're all seeing the change right now, right? I mean, everyone has Copilot and all of these AI LLM models, right? But the idea of being able to automate the things that can be automated in a business with AI in the service sector is very interesting and it's accelerating very fast.
Which
So
means we're going to need a lot more connectivity and access. It's good for business.
it's good for business. The interesting, you talk about good for business. The interesting thing about all of those things, when you're interacting live on site and interacting with AI and interacting with information, is you need that compute power to not just be in your hand, but to be localized, right? So the hybrid network with edge compute, working with location networks, working with the carrier networks, working with the data provider networks. It's really just such an exciting and disruptive time.
It is certainly where you need to make your mark, right?
Right.
And so let's we have certainly covered a lot of ground in this conversation. Probably we can talk for hours, you and I,
Sure.
and just
Fun.
explore some of these things. But we want to keep it short for everybody to be able to hear the great nuggets. And for those people who are watching, I encourage you to save these and watch a few times because there's some things here that you may want to hear again. John, as we begin to wrap up, I have a few rapid fire questions. Okay, these
All
are
right. Lay
quick,
it on me.
couple of hit answers for each. Okay, what would you say is the key to success for you?
Perseverance.
All right, what is your one piece of advice for other business owners?
Perseverance.
Remain focused. Go back to those basics, and know
Yes.
that you got into this for a reason. Stay with
Yes.
that in mind. What is one book that you are reading or you have read that you will highly recommend other people get a hold of?
Ooh. There are so many of them. There's a book that I read by a gentleman by the name of Kai Feng Li. Kai Fu Lee. He's a Chinese. He was the guy who first developed Apple's voice recognition software, and he has become a just an absolute lighthouse in the in AI technology and machine learning technology. And his some of his seminal books are amazing. What is it? AI Superpower. That's the name of it.
Yeah, it's superpower. Well, it is certainly relevant at this
Kai
time.
Fu
We probably
Lee.
need to get a hold of it anyway. Um, all right. Well, let me see. If you had one area that for your business that you could choose to improve tomorrow, magic one type, right? We're just at the push of a button for you technology guys. What would that be? What area of your business you could immediately improve tomorrow? You could do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I would say the as a service piece of it that being able to change our structure to serve up applications through the networks we build as a service and to serve up the networks themselves as a service.
Right.
Um, yeah, and it's not just because that's good for business. It is. But to be able to build into the business model the technology evolution of these networks in our
That's
public
right.
spaces,
That's exactly
right?
right.
Being able to build that in so that hospitals networks stay up to date, right? So that corporate networks are the most efficient and provide the most value. That's, yeah, I would have to say that.
I think you're hitting the mark right there because I mean, ultimately, everything that requires an upgrade is an investment, right? And so maybe we make a big investment today, but then we don't touch it for 5 years, and that's a problem.
Right.
Technology, the way that is running, we almost have to do something new every 6 months.
Yeah, it's interesting because, if you take that approach, then you begin to look at the solutions you specify, the equipment you specify, the in a different way, right? You start to look at, oh, well, now what we really need to do is have everything software defined, right? What we really need to do is to have everything modular, right? And so what
Yes,
we have to do is when we put these antennas in, we need to look 5 years ahead. And what frequencies are going to be using in 5 years, and how can this evolve? It forces you to think in a different way, and not only is it better for business, but it's greener.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So before we get into the final question of the day, John, how can other people learn more about you or your company? How can they get in touch with you? What kind of offers do you have out there for the marketplace?
Sure, that's a pretty straightforward one. InfoLink-USA.com is our website. InfoLink-USA.com. And that just you can read about us and get in touch with us. I think the offer that I'd like to make, and it's one that we offer to all of our first time customers, is that we'll take your information, get your floor plans, etc., look at your problem, and when we'll put engineering at risk to help you assess your problem. Right? We'll take and we'll do the cycles to help you figure it out and do that at risk. Meaning, if you don't do anything with it, okay, great. We all learn something. If we do, then we'll pay for that engineering when we build the system.
There you go. Love it. So, John, to the final question then is, things change. What you found inspiring many years ago, maybe is not these days. But what would you say you find that is most inspiring for you today?
Well, I mean, on a personal level, seeing my children grow up and become productive members of society.
Yes, we need
uh,
that.
um, yes. But on a business level, you know, watching people when the phone works when it didn't work where it should have before, where they wanted it to before, or like these augmented reality art shows, when someone sees something for the first time, or a group of people see something for the first time, and that moment of aha, really, I mean, it just drives me. It's so much fun.
That's it right there. That's exactly right. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this with us. Thank you to the audience for watching and sharing. And, you never know who you might inspire by having them listen to this interview. And so, with that, thank you. We'll see you next time. Make it a great day.
Take care, Coach. Thank you.